this is the big thing that I wanted to talk about with relation to this, because I saw a lot of discussion about this the other day when this was kind of said. So, according to Doctor Who Filming Locations, friend of the channel, this is where the Daleks come in, has just been heard on set. So, we can assume that this is for the finale episodes 7 and 8, that they are filming presently. And I've seen some debate about this, and honestly, I'm not sure where I stand, or sit in my case. So I wanted to give my 2 cents on it. So there's been a few responses to this. The present one that I see a lot, at least in the Twitter sphere of things, is, oh, Dalek finale, how original. And to an extent, I do get that. I think it is worth noting, though, before we do get into this, that obviously, whilst I don't doubt what Doctor Who Filming Locations is reporting, it's important to acknowledge that the crew could very well be saying this to mislead the onlooking fans, to take the mick a little bit. Russell T Davies is known for sort of teasing in this way, so this isn't by any means confirmed yet, but it makes for an interesting conversation nonetheless. So there's been a lot of talk about, oh, are the Daleks being overused, the finale, it feels very predictable. I think it's an interesting conversation because unlike with the Master, whereas if you remember, I made a video saying I don't really want the Master to come back long term, the Daleks are a bit of a different case where not only do I think that space fascism is just an infinitely more malleable and interesting concept at this point than what if the Doctor was evil, but also they're the show's Joker, essentially. They are the antithesis to the central character. They are what is always going to be the most iconic antagonist of Doctor Who. And that's not the only reason I think they should come back, far from it. But I think when people say, oh, they should retire the Daleks, it's like, they're never gonna, though. Like, at least not for a long term. And there's also that whole thing in terms of, is there an agreement for them to return at least once per series? I think there probably is. But honestly, I think my biggest issue with Dalek usage in recent years is honestly less so that there's too much of them, and more so just that the capacities in which they are used aren't ideal to me. Like, a lot of the time, they'll be in kind of bit cameo parts, or, I mean, obviously we did have the Chibnall Dalek trilogy, but even things like Eve of the Daleks, I know a lot of people like Eve of the Daleks, it felt a bit like, eh. And like, Moffat as well. I think Moffat has his issues with the Daleks. So honestly, I don't really agree with this notion that the Daleks are overused. I would more so make the case that I think they just need to be given proper prominence again and a proper role to be a proper threat in a bigger capacity than just, oh, we'll have them pop up at New Year's because why not? Don't get me wrong, I think those stories have their moments, but nobody has managed to make the Daleks feel as much of a big deal as Russell T Davies was. When the Daleks showed up in RTD1, it wasn't this, oh, the Daleks again, how original, kind of what we see now. It was this, oh my god, they're back. It was this big thing, the reveal at the end of Doomsday, the moment in Dalek where they're shrouded in shadow only to see the light illuminate. So many moments like that. The moments in, like, Bad Wolf, right, where you've got Rose sort of appearing on that ship only to hear that familiar hum, and you get the extermination of the thing that's hooked up to the game station. Things like that. The Daleks always felt like a big deal. And what I'm hoping to see with the Daleks is not, oh, retire them. I think just make them feel like a big deal again. Make them feel like this is the ultimate Doctor Who foe. And I think it's also important to consider with this that for most, or a lot of people at least, this will be an introduction to a wider audience for Doctor Who for quite a few people. Because not only is it obviously on the BBC as always, it's also going to be on Disney Plus internationally, which I think is going to bring a lot of eyeballs who might not have seen Doctor Who before to it. And I think it's kind of inevitable, Terry Nation contract or not, that the Daleks are going to feature in at least one story in the first series of this era, because you kind of have to introduce them at some point. They're the guys, they're the villains, they're the ultimate Doctor Who bad guy. And obviously, this isn't a new thing. With each sort of era or sort of refresh that we've had in the revival, the Daleks are not often far behind. Series 1, they appear about halfway through, and then again in the finale, Victory of the Daleks, 3 episodes in. Into the Dalek is like 2 episodes in. You get it. It was really early on with Capaldi that they showed him with the Daleks, and then with Whittaker, even Whittaker, whose series 11 was, oh, we're not doing any sort of returning villains. That was the big gimmick. Even that had a Dalek special in some form. So I think it's somewhat inevitable that with the start of a new era, you're going to get the Daleks. And I also just think with the whole thing of, oh, the Dalek finale, that's so played out, we haven't actually had one of those for about like 15 years, I want to say, 15, 16 years. I think a lot of people saying that I think it happens more than it does. I think part of where the confusion maybe comes from is that they've, like I've said earlier, have a lot of bit parts. You have them in things like the Pandorica, and you have them in Power of the Doctor, and all this sort of stuff, where they're there, but they're not really the core antagonist. And I think that makes them seem the finale villains more times than they actually are. Honestly, there's far more cases of the Master and the Cybermen being the finale villain recently than there is the Daleks. And like I say, I would like to see the Daleks being used as a prominent threat again to be done well. So no, I don't think the Daleks are necessarily overused, or that a Dalek finale for Series 14 is a bad idea, as some do. I think it really does just depend on execution. And I do think that out of the showrunners of New Doctor Who, Russell T Davies is the one who, in my opinion, gets the Daleks the most. So yeah, that's my opinion on that. Someone wrote them better than RTD, Robert Shibard. That's true. That's very true. That is very true. But, you know, my point still stands. In terms of showrunners, I think Russell just gets it. What sort of look do you want the Daleks to take on? Honestly, I think I want something more clean. I want something a bit more sort of, I think like 60s kind of vibes, but not in the Doctor Who 60s kind of way, but in the kind of the bright 60s kind of way. I absolutely love, and I want to give a shout out here. Something like this would be absolutely ideal, courtesy of James Johnson. These boys are absolutely beautiful, and this is kind of the vibe I would like. Something a bit more sort of clean and sort of 60s chromey aesthetic. No, we're post-Time War now. We don't need grunge Daleks anymore, you know, we're post that. Give us the clean Daleks who are showing off at the peak of their power. That is what I want to see from the Daleks going forward. Very much in a similar way to how I feel the Imperial Dalek models feel very regal and important, and with how they look, the gold and the white. I think this could achieve a very similar thing. And they're just beautiful. So something like this, with similar colours, you know, you could go for any of these colour schemes, and I think they would work incredibly well. So yeah, that's kind of what I would like them to look like. I think if the Daleks are redesigned, I'll be more excited. I will be slightly disappointed if it is just the Time War ones. I agree, Daleks are only ever be used because they were used constantly in Reed Moffat Dalek era stories, and popped up in unnecessary places in the Moffat era. Chib's Dalek eps were better. I think, it's difficult. I would agree. I think Chibnall got the Daleks slightly better than Moffat did. I will concede you that. I do agree. I think Moffat tended to overcomplicate them. I think my only issue with Chibnall's Daleks is I feel like there's slightly the reverse, where if Moffat overcomplicated them, Chibnall undercomplicated them. A lot of their dialogue to me has always felt very kind of, parody issues too strong, but I suppose kind of one note. Like in Either the Daleks, I think is the best example. You've got the Daleks do not do this, Daleks do not do, etc. You know, it feels a little bit simplified. Whereas I feel like with the RTD Daleks, they kind of struck that balance of being smart and interesting as Daleks, but also feeling like Daleks. Colourful Daleks are so cool. Yeah, honestly, I feel like ever since the paradigm happened, and I said earlier on in the stream that I liked the paradigm, but ever since the paradigm happened, I feel like they've been afraid of giving us colourful Daleks again, and I don't agree. I think it can be done really well.